I should have been very happy the day I realized my psoriasis symptoms were finally gone. I should have been. After all, I'd had it for 14 years. 14 years of dry, flaky skin. 14 years of itching, irritation, and occasional bleeding. 14 years of arranging my life around the embarrassment and self-consciousness of knowing that people were staring at me. 14 long years. Now my skin was clear, unblemished. Hadn't itched for nearly a year, yet I was angry. Angry that my psoriasis was gone? That all that misery was over? Yes. Well, okay, let me clarify. I was delighted it was gone, of course. But I was angry at how long I had suffered before finally finding out how to get rid of it. Angry that I had undergone years of creams, ointments, treatments, and therapies, none of which had truly helped me, all of which had disappointed me in the end. What infuriated me most, though, was the discovery that the solution for psoriasis was both simple and already known to certain people. I'd been through so many treatments, suffered so many false hopes, endured so much discomfort and unhappiness. All because I'd believed that if I tried as many remedies as possible, I'd eventually stumble on one that actually worked. Which turned out not to be true. I played the numbers game, and I lost. I'd given up in the end, as so many people with my condition end up doing. And instead, I'd endured the embarrassment, the physical discomfort, and the practical day-to-day frustrations of a person whose every waking moment was controlled, consciously or subconsciously, by a condition that I thought I'd never be rid of. The embarrassment of psoriasis. In all those years, I had developed a dozen ways of building my life around my psoriasis. A dozen ways of trying to make the condition not matter to me anymore. Which, of course, failed. Because my psoriasis always mattered. Because it always did something to my life whether I wanted it to or not. As a child and then a teenager, we're naturally self-conscious about our looks, about how people think of us, about what people say about us. They say you grow out of that self-consciousness. As you get older, you get wiser and are less concerned with other people's opinions. That's probably true, unless you have psoriasis. Because the thing with any noticeable skin condition is that every single day someone notices you for the first time. A cashier at the supermarket, a passing policeman, a new work colleague, a relative's friend, just a person walking past me on the street. I know instantly that they've noticed me, and I know exactly what they've noticed about me. Of course, polite people do their best to show they haven't noticed that your skin is flared or scaly and dry. Others, though, are far less worried about how their actions distress you. They stare, and when they did, I knew exactly what they were staring at. It was humiliating, but also intensely frustrating. "Can't you just not look?" I'd scream at them, but only in my mind. At times, the itching was unbearable. I didn't much enjoy meeting new people. And as you might expect, I was extremely anxious about new romantic relationships. I'm actually not bad looking, and I'm outgoing, educated, well-read. So reasonably attractive to the opposite sex, but I struggled to even speak to someone I liked. No matter what they did, I always thought, they're looking at that dry patch on the side of my scalp. They spotted the red skin on my arm. They're wondering if it's contagious. They're turned off by my appearance. Well-meaning friends advised me to ignore it. Think positive thoughts. Don't assume people are thinking about your skin condition. But the sheer effort of pretending none of this was happening, that everything was just normal, was itself exhausting. Sometimes I didn't bother pretending. When the condition was covering more than half my body, it became impossible to hide, especially in summer. I never stopped wishing I could just grow out of it. I was well into adulthood before I realized it just doesn't work that way. Psoriasis even affected the jobs I could do. My condition flared up from time to time, making me red and blotchy. Sometimes my skin would bleed and I wouldn't even notice it. So I certainly didn't want customer-facing roles. I once stayed in a horrible company. There was bullying, discrimination, and a really toxic atmosphere because I simply couldn't face the embarrassment of going to job interviews. The thought of being on display filled me with dread. Even in the firm I now work for, which I absolutely love, my skin condition made me reluctant to seek promotion. Because as I became more senior, I knew I'd have to meet other people in our company, and they'd see the scaly skin and the red blotches that made up my appearance. That's changed now that my psoriasis is gone. My career is healthier than it's ever been. But my condition held me back for years, costing me relationships, job satisfaction, and money. In some ways, my condition robbed me of life. I've got that life back now. I'm so happy. But I do wish I'd found my remedy sooner. There are many treatments for psoriasis, and like so many people, including you perhaps, I'd tried a lot of them. In fact, I went through a series of escalating treatments. You will probably either have tried some of these already, or you're worrying that you eventually will have to. First was an emollient, a cream applied to the skin to reduce water loss and cover the area with a protective film. That reduced my itching for a while. This was followed by moderately strong steroid creams, topical corticosteroids if you want to get technical. These reduced my symptoms quite noticeably. For a short while, I actually thought my psoriasis was being cured. That turned out not to be true at all, unfortunately. Although my psoriasis got gradually worse, my GP was very reluctant to strengthen the steroids, because side effects could include thinning and therefore splitting of the skin, which sounded horrible enough that I didn't want to take the risk. I was already experiencing bleeding. He did add calcipotriol, a vitamin D treatment, to the steroid treatment, and that combination of treatments did reduce my symptoms briefly. But my psoriasis was developing in its own way and at its own pace. In fact, the condition rarely stays the same for anyone. It changes over time in unpredictable ways. Treatments rarely keep up. Next, I tried a drug which lowers activity in the immune system, which in turn reduces the inflammation that leads to psoriasis. Unfortunately, one of the side effects, a burning skin sensation in places all over my body, prevented me from using the treatment for long enough. The side effect was in some ways worse than the psoriasis itself. I also tried phototherapy in combination with dithronol and cold tar, and again I noticed some definite improvements in my condition, but again, the good news wore off gradually. Everything did something for a while, and that actually is what they all had in common. They improved my symptoms and gave me some sort of relief, but as my condition progressed, they became increasingly less effective. The psoriasis would reassert itself, and I was almost back where I started. In more recent years, my joints started to hurt, my neck, knees, and elbows especially. It was more an ache, and it occurred only when I bent down to pick something up or if I ran for a bus. But that, of course, led me to wonder if I was developing psoriatic arthritis. It's a real risk for psoriasis sufferers. The last thing I wanted was to lose my mobility. My last medical treatment was a light treatment called PUVA. By this time, my psoriasis was switching between bad and severe, and specialists were running out of options. I did not like PUVA at all. Before the PUVA session, I had to take a protective tablet containing psoralins. Then I was subjected to the light treatment. It was not pleasant. I had to wear special glasses for 24 hours after each treatment to prevent eye cataracts. Side effects include nausea, headaches, burning, and itchiness. I smile now as I recall that the side effects of a psoriasis treatment were effectively more psoriasis. The final straw. There's a reason why PUVA was my last treatment. It's this. At each new level of treatment, the side effects of the treatment grew more worrisome. The PUVA treatment I just mentioned was a case in point. I reached a stage where my worries about what could go wrong exceeded my hopes for a cure. Consider this. The next level of psoriasis treatments is called systemic treatments. They're called systemic because they work at the level of the whole body. While they aren't cures as such, they do have marked success in controlling psoriasis. But the side effects are something else. Collectively, side effects can include rashes, dry lips and nasal passages, fertility problems in men and women, nausea, liver damage, kidney disease, and high blood pressure. And because they work on the immune system, some of these treatments leave you open to some nasty infections as well. Which means most of these treatments have to be stopped after 12 or 16 weeks if they're not working. I did wonder if, in some cases, the side effects were worse than the psoriasis itself. I mean, is liver damage worse than a skin condition? I'd say it was. Psoriasis didn't just take a physical toll. One thing became more noticeable as my treatment options ran out. I felt less happy in myself, less assured. My moods changed, and I had to work harder at being my usual cheerful self. Even though I had sympathetic people around me, I felt isolated, as if I was unusual or strange. Psoriasis is a condition that works on your body, but also on your mind. I'm a naturally optimistic person, but I knew nobody really understood what it was like for me. Psoriasis was affecting how I felt about relationships, work, and life itself. Avoiding new people whenever possible, avoiding career moves that put me in front of new people, wearing long sleeves and long trousers, even in hot weather, to cover up ugly patches of skin, making contingency plans in case I had a flare-up. It all meant I wasn't controlling my psoriasis. It was controlling me, and I knew it. But after the PUVA treatment failed, I doubted I'd ever get rid of it. My GP had suggested early on that I speak to other sufferers. He said it would be good for me to know I wasn't the only one with this. I finally reached the stage where that seemed like a good idea. It was a good idea, but it also wasn't. It was heartening for a while to communicate on forums with people who were going through what I was going through. I realized I wasn't alone, and there is some comfort in that. But I could also see that many of those sufferers had their psoriasis for years, many years, 20 or more in some cases. The thought of that being my fate sent my mood crashing. I was reaching a state of despair. I had already had more than enough. My own psoriasis had worsened slowly over the years. I could see that it had for others too. I didn't know where it was going to end. But one day, while reading through other sufferers' comments, I had a huge stroke of luck. It's the stroke of luck that has me here writing to you today, as an ex-psoriasis sufferer. If I hadn't read a chance comment, I would undoubtedly still be suffering today. Here's what happened. In one of the old forums I used to read, somebody there talked about handling the triggers for psoriasis, the underlying causes. They said there were alternative treatments that were actually working. They worked because they tackled psoriasis from a completely different angle. They went into the real cause of the condition rather than working on the symptoms. I've heard of this before, but really my focus was on conventional treatments, drugs, procedures, things involving specialists. I didn't go in for that alternative stuff because I figured modern medicine was pretty darned advanced now. Alternative remedies are fine if you've got nothing better to do, but if modern medicine can't cure it, then we'll just have to wait until they can, right? But here's the shocker. We can actually significantly reduce or completely remove psoriasis, and we've known how to for many years. The underlying causes of the psoriasis chain might not be intricately understood, but it's well enough understood that many sufferers can reduce or end their condition in weeks. There are no drugs involved, though, no procedures, so no medical bills or charges, no fees for specialists, and no ongoing business for the pharmaceutical companies. No profit, in other words, which might explain why modern medicine isn't more enthusiastic about the remedy for psoriasis. But it's there, and people are using it. Here's how it works. The basics of psoriasis. If you have psoriasis, then you may already know quite a few things about your condition. Your GP told you things. So did your dermatologist. So did Google. But you've still got it, which is exactly what happened to me. I ended up knowing a lot, but still having psoriasis. You and I will know some of the same things, but I learned a couple of key distinctions about psoriasis that weren't emphasized by my specialists. They made all the difference, as you'll see in a few moments. So here's what I learned. First, you and I already know that psoriasis isn't a skin condition. We know it's an inflammation problem, that it's connected to our immune systems going wrong. It's believed that our immune system malfunctions, and our fighter cells, the T cells, attack healthy skin by mistake. That T cell activity leads to ongoing chronic inflammation. The inflammation leads to the flaky, red, itchy skin condition that psoriasis sufferers are so used to. Worse, to replace skin cells that are being attacked, our bodies produce new cells at a faster rate, which the immune system then attacks via more T cells. In healthy people, new skin cells are produced at the deepest level of our skin. They move up gradually until they reach the surface, then they die and flake off. This takes 3 to 4 weeks. If you have psoriasis, however, this all takes place in 3 to 7 days. There's a kind of frenzied loop going on here where one activity, T cells attacking healthy skin cells, leads to more skin cells being produced, which in turn leads to more T cell activity. And the inflammation caused by the T cell attacks contributes to the red, itchy, flaky skin condition we know as psoriasis. And to all the well-documented misery of being a person with psoriasis. Why is all this happening? Environmental factors and genes are the primary causes of this malfunction. I'll quickly explain those. Environmental factors. In this case, these largely refer to A. Things we inhale, eat, drink, or put on our skin. B. Less well-known but vitally important factors such as mood, thoughts, state of mind, self-esteem. Specifically, chemicals in our environment can play havoc with our immune systems. For psoriasis sufferers, this can lead directly to the dysfunctional immune system activity that creates the inflammation that we see as psoriasis. These environmental factors are huge, and they are now well-known contributors not only to psoriasis, but also to a wide range of human diseases and conditions, allergies, asthma, lowered fertility, some cancers, and lots of other ailments. Genetic factors. There can be a genetic link between sufferers, which is why it runs in some families. I heard lots of people who had a parent who also had the condition. And then you'd have siblings where one has it and the other doesn't. One person told me that he and his youngest sister had psoriasis, while the middle sibling had never had it. Which was odd in a way. All three of them would have had the gene, yet only two of them got the condition. And this is where asking the right questions leads to the right answers. So why do some people have the psoriasis gene, but no psoriasis? It was disheartening to learn that psoriasis was genetically determined. You have the psoriasis gene, then you'll get psoriasis, and there's nothing you can do about it. Turns out, however, that this is completely untrue, because genes don't cause psoriasis. It's genes plus triggers. One without the other will not cause psoriasis. The wrong genes might make you more susceptible to psoriasis, but they don't directly cause it. You need other things, triggers, basically. Get rid of those other things, and guess what? You got rid of the reasons to have psoriasis in the first place. The triggers are varied, but they're mostly in your environment, your personal environment, what you eat and drink, how you think and feel. But that's such a key insight. My skin condition was the end result of other factors. It's like a chain. There's a series of links. One link in the chain leads to another. Psoriasis is the last link, the end result. Clearly, if you break the chain somewhere, you don't get that end result. I couldn't switch off my psoriasis gene. But could I make sure it never activated? Breaking the chain and making my psoriasis vanish. Well, it turns out the chain can be broken. If you tackle the condition at the environment level, then you're onto a winner, because a healthy environment means no triggers for the psoriasis gene. So let me tell you how I got rid of my psoriasis. You want to make the right choice for yourself, and I want you to make the right choice for yourself. You need details to do that. Here's what happened for me. I first heard of Julissa Clay in one of the old psoriasis forums I used to visit. There had been a lively discussion about how various environmental factors created problems for your skin, and some contributors said they experienced noticeable improvements from simple changes made to their lifestyles. Julissa's name came up a few times in relation to her natural and effective approach to remedying common but persistent ailments. I followed up with Julissa, and I uncovered some really insightful stuff from her. Here's what Julissa told me. The causes of inflammation have been known for years. There are several culprits, but these are the main ones: diet, lifestyle, and man-made products. These are pretty much the components of any man or woman's personal environment. They actually account for a substantial amount of anyone's health. Get these things wrong, and there are always going to be negative consequences. Get them right, and you're likely to enjoy consistently excellent health, energy, strong immunity, enhanced sense of well-being, and good skin. Julissa told me that if I addressed the mistakes I was making in these areas, then I would also be addressing the underlying causes of the inflammation that caused my psoriasis. She helped me understand exactly how these components were ruining my skin. Here's what I learned. Diet. What we eat and drink obviously affects our health. We're made of the food we eat. Julissa said that if we change the food we eat, then we change the body that we end up with. When I thought about that, it made perfect sense. Now, I've been on diets before, and I never found one I liked, so the word diet doesn't fill me with happiness. However, I found that her advice wasn't specifically about dieting or restrictions, not in the way I'd done before when trying to lose weight. It was simply about adopting new habits. So when I put her advice into practice, I more or less ate as much food as I liked, and I did lose about 5 pounds of fat in the first month or so, but that wasn't part of what the program promises. It's just a side effect, really, of eating well. Please note, if you're underweight, you might want to speak with your doctor before following Julissa's advice. But there are some fairly obvious food truths that are widely known, and the main one is that some foods simply harm you. They contain little or nothing that your body needs, and instead, some of them contain elements that your body actively does not want. Give your body too much of what it doesn't want, and it will tell you about it, sometimes in the most unpleasant ways. The wrong foods can promote the very inflammation that, as a psoriasis sufferer, I knew was causing me absolute misery. And to be truthful, there is no food that tastes so good that I'd suffer psoriasis for it. You might feel the same way, but I do like my food, too much at times. And yet Julissa explained that done right, I could eat chocolate and peanut desserts, sweet and savory dips and pancakes, flapjacks, ice cream, and still see substantial improvements in the condition of my skin. For the few items I either stopped eating or reduced, there was an array of easily sourced alternatives. Some of the new foods she introduced me to weren't new at all. They were in my local supermarket all along. I'd simply not noticed them before. And those alternatives were absolutely delicious. Better, in fact, than what I'd been used to. So the remedy wasn't to stop eating foods I liked. It was to understand what I'm eating, what it's going to do to my skin, and so allow me to make choices that will positively affect my psoriasis. After 14 years of helpless obedience to doctors and specialists, this approach was a breath of fresh air, and it gave me some control over my condition. I can actually do something about it myself. Lifestyle. Julissa explained that aside from diet, a person's lifestyle was one of the biggest influencers on their health. Man or woman, simple changes to your life habits can change your health for the better or the worse. And the effects can be very quick. Some can be noticed that day. These are the factors of lifestyle that directly affected me as a psoriasis sufferer. Stress. Stress is a normal part of human life, but the way we experience it today was not how we were evolved to experience it. In times past, a human would be attacked by a wild beast or a ferocious tribe. Stress went through the roof, soaking him in the chemicals needed to either fight the threat or to flee from it. Once the danger had passed, so too did the stress. These days, that's not what happens to you and me. We don't fight wild beasts anymore. But instead, we suffer low-level stress almost all the time. Unlike our ancestors, for us there's rarely any let-up. We live by the clock, by the demands of work, colleagues, family, friends. Things have to be done this particular way, by that particular time. Even our leisure is structured and limited, requiring us to be at certain places at certain times. There are consequences if we do things wrong, or if we're running late. And this gives rise to low-level but never-ending stress. And when we're stressed, we release the hormone cortisol, which would be fine if that cortisol came and then went, as it's supposed to. Because under natural conditions, cortisol can actually be good for us. One of its effects is to lower inflammation, a positive good for sufferers of psoriasis. Unfortunately, for most of us, cortisol doesn't come and then just go. Modern living creates ongoing low-level background stress. There are always things to be done, relationships to be navigated, deadlines to be met, and routines to be observed. We're always bathed in cortisol. And ongoing cortisol production leads to a condition called cortisol dysfunction. What are the symptoms of cortisol dysfunction? Widespread inflammation and pain. Exactly what a psoriasis sufferer least needs. Mindset. Everyone has physical health, and everyone has mental health. Your physical health might be good, or it might be bad. Same with mental health. You may have good mental health or poor mental health. That's fairly obvious. In all likelihood, your mental health will sit somewhere between good and bad, hopefully closer to good than bad. But the better your mental health, the less likely you'll trigger psoriasis. Doctors have proved over and over the connection between your general emotional state and the functioning of your immune system. In short, happier people have healthier immune systems, so they get ill less. Nevertheless, I'm a little skeptical about that happy thinking stuff. I always accepted that we have our worries and doubts about ourselves, and that the best way to deal with them is to just get on with it. But I learned from Julissa that the way we think generally and the way we think about ourselves specifically has unavoidable knock-on effects. Do we approve of ourselves? Do we think we're good enough? Do we even like ourselves? Strong negative thinking affects men and women and is a component of diseases like depression, which makes a person highly susceptible to disease and illness. But we don't have to be depressed for our moods, our general feelings to weaken our immune systems. As with the low-level stress just mentioned, low-level but ongoing feelings of nervousness, anxiety, worry, or doubts about yourself, your relationships, your self-worth will wear you down mentally. Just the absence of regular positive uplifting thoughts are bad for the immune system, and it's in the immune system that our psoriasis troubles start. I suffered psoriasis. Were my thoughts about myself at an all-time high? Heck no. At various times I was highly self-conscious about the way I looked, about the way people looked at me, about the constant itching. I pride myself on being a strong and independent thinker, but I am only human, and my condition lowered my opinion of myself. Again, you don't need medically recognized low self-esteem for it to be affecting you. As Julissa pointed out, millions of people grind on in life and simply ignore their feelings. But our feelings don't ignore us. And our feelings, if left unaddressed, drag us down. That makes perfect sense. The evidence for this exists throughout the world. And it was obvious to me that in any case, it's better to have healthy, self-approving thoughts about yourself, regardless of faults, than have underlying doubts about your own value. Julissa's guide was eye-opening in this respect. With or without psoriasis, the questions she asked about my thoughts about myself were revealing. I didn't realize how I felt about myself until I was encouraged to think about it. And her simple remedies for some of the low thoughts I discovered I had quite literally transformed the way I thought about me, other people, and the world I lived in. Sleep. I think we all recognize sleep's value to our health and well-being. But Julissa explained just how vital sleep is to health, and to me as a person with psoriasis. Sleep is a detoxifier, which means that, among other things, it facilitates the cleaning out of your body. By day, your various body systems burn energy, process food, breathe, and so on. There's a lot of waste byproducts associated with all this. And it's during deep sleep that your body calms, switches functions down, and so dramatically reduces its waste production. But the day's waste still has to be dealt with. Deep sleep is when the cleansing routines can take place. So what happens if sleep isn't deep enough? What if quality sleep isn't consistent enough? As I discovered, the consequences of not sleeping soundly every night can be very bad on the body's self-cleansing efforts. It simply doesn't get the job done. And if it can't get yesterday's debris removed before the new day starts adding to it, you run into problems. Waste builds up. The immune system then has to start fighting infections, which leads to inflammation. And inflammation is exactly what we don't want when we are already suffering psoriasis. We must sleep long and soundly if our bodies are to cleanse and recover properly. I also learned that even though I thought I was sleeping soundly, that isn't necessarily the case. We don't always notice that our sleep is disturbed. When I practiced Julissa's sleep habits, I felt the effects of improved sleep after just 2 days. Her simple advice just made sleeping that much more satisfying. And to be honest, even if it hadn't led to the clearing up of my psoriasis, I would still be glad of my sleep improvements. They just made me feel better during the day. Movement. Julissa told me about the importance of movement to the reducing of psoriasis. I have to admit, I hate exercise advice. Not sure why, but it always seems to be telling me to do things I don't have time or desire to do. But I quickly realized that I'm a typical example of the 80% of Americans who sit for far too long each day. I sit on the sofa, sit at the table, sit in my car. Sure, I walk and stand too, but for minutes at a time, whereas I sit for hours at a time, like most Westerners. There are now so many studies that confirm that sitting increases low-grade inflammation and adds to the risk of diabetes and heart disease, in case you're interested. I had psoriasis, so that low-grade inflammation was my main concern. I wanted to be rid of it. I sincerely and honestly wanted it gone, and was mentally committed to doing whatever Julissa advised. Still, I initially thought the antidote was going for a run or visiting the gym, neither of which I ever want to do. Turns out I was completely wrong. Julissa showed me such simple cures for too much sitting that I almost laughed. I adopted them into my lifestyle that day. Household poisons. This was also a bit of a shocker. I suppose I was vaguely aware that house cleaning chemicals contain dangerous chemicals. Just look at the user instructions. Wear gloves, don't get on skin, don't inhale, open windows, and don't use in unventilated areas. If accidentally consumed, go straight to hospital. That tells us all we need to know about the ingredients they're using. They're dangerous. And as Julissa points out, even if used as directed, they are effectively poisons in our personal environments. What I didn't realize was that to a lesser degree, my personal cleaners were also potential irritants. Soaps, shampoos, perfumes. I'm not prepared to give those up. Turned out I didn't have to. I just had to make informed choices rather than blind ones. I simply had to know what the heck I was doing. Instead of giving up soaps and shampoos, I gave up psoriasis instead, which was a trade I'd make any day of the week. Is that it? Now, I realize that this sounds like a lot, and as I reread it, it looks like a lot. So how come it's so easy for people like me to implement? And by people like me, I'm talking about average people who aren't iron disciplined with stone-hard grit and determination. People who have otherwise busy lives. People who can't turn their lives upside down just because someone else says it's a good idea. Well, fortunately, Julissa has incorporated all this essential knowledge into a program for clearing up psoriasis and for returning skin to its natural, unblemished self. And that program is broken down into small, bite-sized chunks. She realizes you may not have done this before. And having once been new to this herself, she knows exactly what it's like when you're starting out. Which was useful for me, because as I mentioned, I'm not a fan of diets, and to be honest, I don't do much exercise. And I certainly don't give much thought to how I think. So I knew I would need something that laid it out for me in simple steps. Something that was going to make this easy to succeed at. A no-brainer, basically. And that's what I got. For each element of her program, Julissa's strategy is to explain what's gone wrong, why it goes wrong, and how you can put it right. I grew to really understand how my dried, itchy skin and red patches had specific causes that I could directly affect. It was uplifting to know that I could actively work on the problem myself. Julissa puts her program into a follow-along 4-week plan. She spells out in plain language how to address each of the areas outlined above. I didn't have to look anything up. There's no special equipment required. And absolutely no drugs, medications, procedures, no doctors, specialists, or hospital visits. Just a set of gentle habits developed gradually that soothed my immune system, and which replaced 14 years of inflamed and dried out scales with smooth, unblemished, healthy skin. How my psoriasis faded, then disappeared. First, understand this wasn't an instant fix. Instead, it's a quick one, and it's a lasting one. Second, the program takes about 4 weeks to be properly embedded. I noticed some improvements before the 4 weeks were up, but only at the end of the time did things start to change dramatically for me. I still had the dryness and scaly skin. Some of it itched a little, and there was redness in several patches on my body. But it all stopped getting worse. At about week 3, what I was looking at pretty much wasn't active psoriasis. It was the leftover psoriasis. I didn't properly understand this at the time, but I was actually looking at the after effects of a psoriasis that I no longer had. New skin grew, but this time at its normal rate. My immune system had settled and had stopped attacking my skin cells, so there was no inflammation. The dry, itchy patches were replaced over the following weeks with healthy, normal-looking skin. No more flaking, no redness. I wasn't itching anymore. After years of hiding parts of me away, I wanted to go out and show my new, clear skin to the world. Where I'd had red patches for years, I only had clear, evenly colored skin. Those places that feel like they've itched all my life, nothing. Not even a hint of discomfort. Cracked, bleeding skin, gone. Dry, flaky patches in my scalp that gave me the worst dandruff in the world, disappeared. I've never been so happy. And I really love the gradual approach that Julissa's guide takes. Too many programs dump a huge amount of information on a person and then expect them to get on with it. I certainly am not a person who can operate like that. In my experience, life gets in the way of the best intentions. Things crop up. Distractions are everywhere. So another ambition falls by the wayside, like every New Year resolution I've ever made. That didn't happen this time. Julissa's program gave me new, inspiring steps one at a time, so I was continually moving forward and taking better control of my condition, and I really liked that. As the 4 weeks progressed, so did the improvements to my condition, until one day, I didn't have a condition anymore. A little something extra. Every day with psoriasis is another day you can't wait to get rid of it. Although I noticed improvements to my condition quite quickly, it's a fact that Jalissa's program takes 4 weeks to start making dramatic changes. It can't go faster than that because that's how long it takes to grow new, healthy skin. In the meantime, there's still some skin discomfort, some itching. That can't be helped, but it's still irritating. So she also shows you some natural remedies to the scaling and itching that comes with psoriasis. I hadn't tried any purely natural lotions myself, so this was a bit of a new thing for me, but they were very effective. They're not cures. Jalissa doesn't claim them to be, but they soothe and comfort while the main program starts to take effect. And that was such welcome relief. Not just for psoriasis. There's so much I learned in Jalissa's Psoriasis Strategy that I honestly think people without psoriasis should read it. Of course, I got healthy, content, and physically and emotionally strong in order to cure my psoriasis. But my sister went along with some of what I was doing too, just to see what it was like, and she was very impressed. The better eating lost her a few pounds, which pleased her, of course, but her overall sense of well-being has elevated too. She's happier and healthier. Those habits are now pretty much ingrained. I didn't just give them up once my psoriasis disappeared. They're easy. I never think about them. But every day I still look at my clear skin, and I am so thankful I did this. I've had no psoriasis symptoms for more than a year now. It's so wonderful that I still haven't quite got used to it. I wish I'd discovered this years before. It would have saved me a lot of unhappiness. That soreness, itchiness, self-consciousness, all those ointments, the steroids, the phototherapy. The time and energy I spent going from surgery to clinic to drugstore. The hiding parts of me away from other people's eyes when my skin flared. It wasn't necessary. None of it was necessary. Which is the bit I'm angry about. It's like I wasted a large part of my life away with psoriasis. Jalissa's program didn't exist when I first got the condition. But if it had been, I'd have been over psoriasis within weeks. But still, my skin was completely clear. I do not have psoriasis anymore. I'll never have it again. I'm so very grateful I found Jalissa's Psoriasis Strategy. I think you will be too. Clear, healthy skin is guaranteed. You can have a copy of her strategy today. Right now, in fact. And it's a risk-free offer. Jalissa's Psoriasis Strategy comes with a 60-day guarantee. If your psoriasis hasn't gone within 60 days of buying this program, you can have your money back. The Psoriasis Strategy has made psoriasis disappear for so many people that its results are certain. The basis of this approach is so strong and has worked so many times now that a full refund if not satisfied is an easy guarantee to make. You can only lose your psoriasis. As a former sufferer, I can tell you now how wonderful losing my psoriasis felt and how wonderful it still feels. As a psoriasis sufferer yourself, can you imagine what it would be like a month from now when it's all over? What's that going to be like for you? You can find out for real. 28 days later, because that was my story. 14 years of a seemingly incurable skin condition gone in 28 days. 28 days to change my life. To get the life I honestly never imagined was possible for me. And I only had to learn this stuff once. It's not like it's an ongoing effort. Think about this. You already have food and toiletries shopping habits, sleep habits, thinking habits. They're already there. Everybody has these. All I did was gradually change them, make them a little better. Jalissa's Psoriasis Strategy showed me exactly how. And habits once set are easy to follow. After all, that's what a habit is. Something you do without even having to think about it. Except these habits tackled the root cause of my psoriasis and made sure that once it was gone forever. Imagine yourself 28 days from now. What does non-itchy, non-flushed skin feel like? What does naturally moisturized, blemish-free skin look like? I'd spent years hoping I'd grow out of my condition. So often I thought the doctors had finally beaten it. They never did. Today, it's different. I don't have to imagine clear, healthy skin. I could just look at it in the mirror. Today, I don't even think about the habits I adopted that ensure my skin stays that way. It took about a month for those habits to become easy, another month for them to become unthinking, natural. All I think about now is my skin, my beautiful, clear skin. I see it every day. I don't take it for granted, but I do love it. You can love your own skin too. Psoriasis is not an inevitability. Click the order link below and you can own a copy of Jalissa's Psoriasis Strategy in about 90 seconds. And then you have taken step 1 on the short journey to clean, clear, itch-free skin. The remedy for psoriasis makes sense. We already know that psoriasis has a strong genetic influence, and yet only some people with a genetic bias for psoriasis actually get the condition. The key trigger for psoriasis is our personal environment, our diet, frame of mind, chemicals, and household products. These 3 elements are long known to medicine as influencers on our immune system and health. Modern medicine has evidenced this beyond even an ounce of doubt. And it's all too easy to trigger a condition you don't want, especially if the gene for that condition is present. Triggers in our environment create the immune system dysfunction that gives rise to runaway inflammation, and then to psoriasis. What happens if you remove those triggers? You've removed the conditions in which psoriasis thrives. You've taken away its entire reason to exist, its ability to exist, and replaced it with the life you've always wanted but thought you could never have. Click the order link below and tackle your psoriasis triggers for the clear, comfortable skin you crave. You're unlikely to grow out of your psoriasis anytime soon, if ever. It'll go if you act. It'll stay if you don't. I suffered for 14 years. I'd still be suffering now if I hadn't stumbled on Jalissa's Psoriasis Strategy and acted on it. It's not known if long-term psoriasis becomes incurable. You'll have to suffer for many years to find that out. Whatever the future holds, you can choose for it to be riddled with the misery of an embarrassing, life-denying, and deeply uncomfortable condition. Or you can choose for it to be clear-skinned, comfortable, psoriasis-free. It all hinges on your decision right now. The psoriasis strategy worked for me, and it worked for hundreds of others, with all the different variations of the affliction. Results are guaranteed. Can you lose? Of course. You can lose psoriasis. I would never have suffered this for 14 years if I'd been offered Jalissa's strategy after the first month. I wouldn't have done that to myself. You're here because you've had enough of this condition. So get rid of it now and step into the life you thought you could never have. You're 90 seconds away. Click the order link below and we'll do the rest.